You have to ask yourself, why was it that Germany had such trouble getting some of its gold back? And we're only talking about 300 tons of their gold sitting in the Federal Bank of New York. I mean, they were initially told it would take 7 years to get back. Why? Well, as I say, we've got this dollar-based system. If we're allies of America, we're not going to tell the Americans, look, this is absolute rubbish. You've got to go back onto a gold standard. Apart from anything else, it would require a proper audit of, gold in Fort Knox and then the various other centers. In other words, the 8,130 odd tons, which the Americans say they've got, has got to be established as being a true figure. The other problem is that the New York Fed, which acts as if you like, the vaulting agent for earmarked gold, which was what they call earmarked gold, which is gold held in New York for foreign central banks. There's no doubt that they have been leasing gold out, and not only have they been leasing it out, it has gone from their control, from their premises, from their vault, and there is a shortage of gold there. And I mean, we've got no direct evidence of this because government refuses to tell us. But you have to ask yourself, why was it that Germany had such trouble getting some of its gold back? And we're only talking about 300 tons of their gold sitting in the Federal Bank of New York. I mean, they were initially told it would take 7 years to get back. Why? It's their bloody property. They weren't even allowed to go and inspect it. So there's definitely something very fishy going on about gold reserves in that country. So I think generally, it's something we just cannot deal with. We're not in a position to handle it. So if you see what I mean, there is absolutely no way we can deal with this problem.
Yeah.
Whereas, Russia and China have prepared themselves because they knew this was coming. Well, it's going to be exactly the same. They're in exactly the same problem. I mean, my friend Steve Hanke, who's a professor at Johns Hopkins University, describes the dollar as the least dirty shirt, if you like, in the lot. Well, I'm not sure that he's quite right now because I think under Trump, that shirt's got a lot dirtier. But the fact of the matter is that the whole of the fiat currency system is based on the dollar as the principal or the reserve currency. When the dollar goes, they go as well. It's as simple as that. So we've got a situation, I'm afraid, where the entire Western system, which is really is a financialized system, is now, I think, on the skids. And this is not good. And I've just actually written an article today for my Substack subscribers, describing this as a second Bretton Woods event, if you like. The first one was the dollar was driven off the gold standard, which was it was hardly a gold standard, really. This time, we're beginning to see the accelerated collapse in the value of fiat currencies. And this is the beginning of the end for the dollar. And I think, we don't know how long the process will take. I mean, it could be as little as 6 months. It could be overnight. It could be 2 years. It could be 3 years. But I don't think it's very much longer than say, a few years now. And I think also we should be, we're going to get impoverished by this, make no doubt. This is not good. And anybody who doesn't understand what's going on is going to lose out big time. If you do understand what's going on, then you just get out of credit to whatever extent you think you should, and have some real money, which is gold, possibly silver. So, I mean, that's roughly where we are. But I mean, the good news in all this is that somebody out there, in the form of China, Russia, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the rest of the world, BRICS, the people who want to join BRICS and all the rest of it, are actually that is where the future of the world lies. We're dying in the West, but there is a future there. And I think this is a terribly important point. So, in the future, those of us who have the means, I think, maybe the youthful energy, can, continue in business, if you like, by establishing relations in that new economic bloc, our own having fallen apart. Okay, two questions. I'll deal with the second one first. People who make that comment basically do not understand the difference between money and credit.
Agreed.
That's the fundamental point. The central banks that are buying it have been predominantly Asian. And I think really those very much in the, if you like, the information network of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and also BRICS. And that obviously is led by Russia and China. Now, Russia, you could argue, has the interest to try and destroy the dollar. They haven't actually taken any steps in that direction, I think basically because the Chinese have encouraged them to stay their hand. China's approach to international affairs is to let others make mistakes. They don't want to get blamed for anything. They have to continue to trade with us. So what they do basically is they do what they do, but they're not going to go and make life difficult for anyone else. Until, of course, there gets a point, and I think this is where we are. There comes a point where the Chinese authorities realize they have to protect their own currency from a collapse in the dollar. To that extent, I think Trump has brought forward a lot of the problems that were already in the dollar. And what the Chinese are now doing is they're looking at the impact on their own currency and saying, well, do we want to hold dollars in our reserves? The answer is no. So they sell the dollars. Then sort of saying to themselves, the way the dollar is going, it's in a debt trap. I mean, they're making the analysis that I'm making. I mean, these guys are not stupid. They really do understand what they're doing. In fact, they're a lot cleverer than me, I would say. So what they're doing is they're looking at the consequences for their own currency. So rather than, let us say, going out to make the dollar's life more difficult, what they're doing is they're now seeking to protect themselves. It's as simple as that. The way they see this is they know, and they've known this going all the way back certainly to 1983, when they appointed the People's Bank of China with the sole responsibility for managing the nation's gold and silver acquisition programs. They acquired an awful lot of gold without telling anybody. I mean, it didn't go onto the central bank's reserve balance sheet, as it were. It went into wealth funds, safe. It also went round to the People's Liberation Army, the Communist Youth Party, and so on. All these various accounts were used to hide large quantities of bullion. Now, so they have got the bullion to protect themselves because they know that with a capitalist system, and this is what they've been taught in Marxist schools, capitalist system eventually destroys itself. And part of that destruction is the end of its currency. So they have known ever since the 1970s, ever since Mao Zedong passed away, they have known they needed to protect themselves from events external to China over which they had no control. And knowing that fiat currencies, which started in 1971, basically, they know that they were going to collapse. So what do? They have to acquire the gold to protect their own currency. So that's the background to their policy. They have done that. They have the gold. Now, they're now in a position where they have overtly been selling dollars, getting rid of them. So what do? I mean, do you go and buy euros? No, because, or yen? No, you don't do that for the very simple reason that if the dollar is going to be wiped out or suffer a huge, great devaluation, it's going to undermine the purchasing power of every other currency. So no, you don't do that. You have to go into real legal money. So what you have seen is a reserve shift in the People's Bank of China away from dollars, away from other currencies, into gold, into real money. They understand the difference between legal money and credit. Credit is always someone else's liability. And when that liability gets too much, for that credit to be credible, get the hell out of it. That's what they're doing. And so if you look at the central banking community as a whole, it's all the central banks who regularly meet as members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or dialogue partners of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and so on and so forth, and also the BRICS members. These guys, they meet and they talk. And not only that, but of course, people who are not, or central banks that are not quite in that area, they also meet and talk. And they have connections. And they begin to understand this. Like Poland, for example. Poland has been very aggressively accumulating gold. So much so that really there's very, very little available. We now have another problem, and that is that China's savers have got nowhere else to go other than bank deposits and gold. Now, the Chinese are cutting interest rates basically to try and stimulate production, whatever. We don't actually know why they're doing it. We can make assumptions. But the point is they're cutting interest rates. So from the point of view of the depositor, the household, as it were, the household savings, they're finding that the return that they're getting on their savings is going down. So where do they go? They see the gold price in yuan breaking into new high ground. This is the new game in town as far as they're concerned. We're not actually thinking too hard about why it might be going up. We may have an idea. We might have our own ideas. Basically, it's the psychology of a bull market. And are you going to miss out on it? The answer is no. So what you do is you tell your bank, and this is something they have in China, the banks offer in China, they offer gold accumulation plans. So what you do is you contact your bank and you say, please put 500 yuan a month into a gold accumulation plan for me. The value, the annual, this year, or I think last year's household savings were calculated to be the equivalent of about $2.5 trillion. So you can see household savings overhanging the bullion market suddenly making the average person in the street first stop and think, and then secondly, wonder whether he should buy some, and then thirdly, actually going out and buying some. This is in China, big, big time. So everything is actually beginning to fall apart for the dollar. And this is, this is why, the gold price seems to have soared, but it's actually the dollar going down. The other interesting thing, and these are developments literally in the last few days, is that the Chinese authorities, led by the People's Bank of China and the Shanghai Gold Exchange, which it controls, have said that they're going to open gold vaults in foreign countries, which will facilitate the buying and selling of yuan instruments, selected yuan instruments, then finding what they can do outside China. Now, this is a big, big innovation because up until now, China has never permitted any gold to leave China. Literally, it's like Hotel California for gold. It never gets out. What we've seen is that they have announced that they're going to be opening a vault in Hong Kong. Now, that makes sense because Hong Kong, if you like, is the financial outlet, the international financial outlet for China. So, yeah, that makes sense. This morning or overnight, we hear that the Saudis have agreed to a vault being opened in Saudi Arabia. This is going to lead to yuan being exchanged for gold, gold being exchanged for yuan. It's going to lead to oil being priced more in yuan than in dollars. This is the Saudis recognizing exactly the argument we're talking about, that actually the dollar is dead. The dollar is in its last throes. So they've got to protect themselves. They can no longer take revenue exclusively in dollars. They have got to get out of that. They have got to have a plan B. They're doing exactly the same thing as the Chinese. So what we're getting I mean, at the moment, it'll be a floating rate, if you like, between the yuan and gold. But at some stage, that's going to get fixed. And that will be fixed, if you like. I don't know, I could imagine the dollar losing maybe another 90% of its purchasing power, something like that. If it really starts accelerating like that, then they'll fix it. They'll fix it. They've got the means to do it. They know how to do it. So that's going to happen.